Hey everybody, Custom Challenge here, and I know it's been a while since I've put out a video, but I've kind of been, I don't know, a little busy. And I wanted to make something about Destiny, but Destiny isn't exactly getting the greatest reception right now, which is kind of actually why I wanted to talk about it, if that makes any sense. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm going to go through a lot of the things that I think is a problem with Destiny 2 at the moment. I love Destiny, okay? I met some really great friends in the first game and had a lot of great experiences, and I've sunk a lot of time into the first game and the second game, so what I'm going to say here isn't without a fair bit of thought. So, some of the things I want to talk about are some of the big complaints that I've noticed a lot of people having with Destiny 2, and essentially ways where it kind of feels like Bungie took a step backwards when it comes to actually how the game is played. And maybe in another video I'll get into some of the fixes, but I don't know, maybe I'll get into it now. I'm kind of going to be ranting. I have a bit of a list here of things I want to talk about, and I'll talk about things as they come up. So, first off, I want to talk about armor. I remember Destiny 1 had a lot of armor, and you could, grind out armor with specific perks, and the perks actually made a difference on how you played. For example, I was a big hand cannon user, so I would be searching for, gauntlets with hand cannon reload, and I liked grenade throw distance because it was just, it really made it feel like I could place those grenades where I wanted them to go. And, chest pieces with, increased armor capacity, helmets with perks that help in PvE and PvP, for example, picking up orbs of light, grant you bonus health. All of these perks are things that you could go for, and you could, set up your armor to build it around your playstyle. But that just, Destiny 2, apart from recently, where they added raid-specific perks to the raid armor. Thank you, Bungie, for listening on that part, because the raid perks actually really help in the raid, like substantial difference. All of the other armor doesn't have perks built into it. So you can get one set of armor no matter what it looks like or where you got it from, and it is essentially no different than any other armor, because you don't really notice a difference in gameplay from switching up one set of armor to another. For example, I can run the Iron Banner armor, or I can run some armor that I got from my Korra. It doesn't matter. You don't see any difference. So sure, you can put mods on your armor and they can make a little bit of a difference, but let's be honest, the mod boosts that you get are so wide-reaching that that Bungie hasn't allowed them to have as strong of an effect. For example, the hand cannon reload effect made it so you could reload your hand cannons very fast, but you wouldn't reload anything else very fast, whereas in this game, you can get kinetic reload or energy reload, and it makes it slightly faster, but not something you're gonna, put the perk on and go, oh yeah, I noticed this right away. You kind of have to look at it, really look at it. And there have been videos, dissecting how the mods work so that people can actually see that they actually do something, and that shouldn't be necessary. So that's talking about the armor. Basically, if we had armor perks like we did in Destiny 1, in Destiny 2, I think it would alleviate a lot of people's complaints, because a lot of people, myself included, kind of think that Destiny 2's armor is just a fashion show. Just look how you want, which I get. A lot of people wanted something like that in Destiny 1. They wanted to make their armor look like what they wanted it to look like and still have the effects of before, but the difference is that you could actually go and get the armor with the perks you wanted on it in-game. So, I don't know. That's just one thing there. So, the next thing I want to talk about is the fixed rolls versus random rolls weapons. This is a big one that everybody complains about in one way or another, and I'm just kind of going to briefly talk about it. So, with fixed rolls, we were originally told that fixed rolls on weapons were meant so that we could have a better balance in the game, and they could balance weapons individually, and it would make it so everybody's not using the same weapon because everything would be on the same power level. But, I'm making this before the March weapons sandbox tuning update, and if anybody's played the game, they know that there's a certain selection of weapons that very clearly dominate, and balance hasn't really been had. Uriel's gift is literally everywhere. But there's also a problem with the set weapon rolls, and that is you have one weapon with one set of perks. So I kind of wanted to get into this to talk about the difference in loot variety. So I looked at the Better Devils, and I did a little bit of math, and I hope I did it right. But if you wanted each person to have a unique perk selection on their gun, meaning nobody's running the same 2 combination of perks, you have 6 variations of the Better Devils. Your fire team going into the raid could all run a marginally different version of the Better Devils, because you have 3 sights, 2 selectable perks, and 1 stationary perk being the exploding rounds. So, yeah. So if I wanted to compare that, for example, to Destiny 1 Year 1 weapon with random rolls, I'm going to look at the W No. So there's 2 perk slots, 2 sight slots that each have 2 sight options and then 1 set sight. So that's 5 possible sights that a person could choose from. And then there's set perk 1, which had 8 possible perk options. You would get 1 of those when you got the weapon. And there's set perk 2, which also had 8 possible perk options. And then in the middle, you had your selectable perks. That's the 3 possible options that you could choose from, and each of those perks could be randomized. Now, on the Year 1 version, each of those slots had 3 different options. So, to simplify it, I made that 1 perk slot with 9 options. So, doing the math on that, the Better Devils, if you wanted each person to have a unique Better Devils, or not Better Devils, my bad, but Devil You Know, if you wanted each person to have a unique Devil You Know without duplicating it, you would have 2,880 possible Devil You Know variations. Now, if I wanted to compare that to the top Year 3 hand cannon that everybody's after, the extremely popular IS Luna, that is 9,750 possible unique variations that players could run. So essentially what you have is Destiny 2's top hand cannon, the Better Devils, has 6 possible options with just minor differences, really. 1 gun. You have 1 gun and you can do all 6 options. Whereas in the previous game, you would need... I didn't do the math on how many different variants of the gun you would need, but there's 9,750 variants of the Luna. So it kind of makes it so that players can get a gun and it just feels more unique to them. That's how it was for me. And that's one of the things I kind of miss. And it doesn't help either that a lot of the low rank weapons you get at the start of the game feel very similar to their high rank equivalents, like the Lionheart going forward into the Scavelock feels very, 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 very similar. So, now that I've got that out of the way, the next thing I want to talk about is the weapon system. Primary, special, heavy in Destiny 1 versus kinetic, energy, and power in Destiny 2. Now, primary, special, and heavy, so you had your primary weapon, your hand cannons, your scout rifles, your pulses, your auto rifles, and those were all kinetic, mostly. That mostly being that there were exotic options that had an element to them. So, those are the weapons you would use the most. Now, your secondary weapons, sidearms, shotguns, fusion rifles, sniper rifles, those are all in that secondary slot, that special weapon slot. They were a little bit more powerful than the the kinetic weapons, and they gave you, like, an elemental option. You couldn't change it, so you'd have to get different weapons with different elements. So you would have to you'd make that decision of what you wanted your special weapon to be. Did you want it to be a sniper rifle and pair it up with your hand cannon? Perhaps you wanted to do what I did and you had a hand cannon and a sidearm. So there's that. And then your heavy weapon, that was your machine guns, rest in peace machine guns, rocket launchers, swords. I mean, those are all really powerful things, and they make sense to have them in that slot. And you would choose which weapons you wanted based on your other weapons, which then gave you, a good balance of gameplay. So you would generally save your special weapons because the ammo was a lot less available. So you would save them for enemies that had shields and were a little bigger than your normal stuff. But you would then save your power weapons to use against the biggest enemies, the strike bosses, or just something you need dead right now. Otherwise, you would primarily use your kinetic weapon, your primary weapon. And that's how the game was. And it had a fairly good balance. Choosing your loadout was important. So now we get into the Destiny 2 version, kinetic weapon, energy weapon, and power weapon. Now, in a recent Destiny community podcast I was watching, Destiny community podcast number 73 with Jack Patillo, he actually summed it up pretty much perfectly. That you don't have that weapon scaling anymore, that power scaling. You can essentially run a kinetic auto rifle, and then an energy auto rifle, and then a rocket launcher. So you have auto rifle 1, auto rifle 2, and a rocket launcher. And the first two don't really play all that different. Now, I know they said that energy weapons were going to deal more damage to shields and people in supers, like other players in their super, and they do, but they don't do less damage in the Crucible to players not in their super than a kinetic weapon, really. So, say you have Uriel's Gift, which I already mentioned, there's no reason to switch to your kinetic auto rifle. So it kind of invalidates kinetic weapons severely. And then the element to your energy weapon has nothing to do with the shield of the enemy. Having a solar weapon shooting at a void shield, you're still going to do the exact same amount of damage. The difference, of course, and this is kind of the fun part, is that there's the elemental nova effect, where the shield pops and damages enemies around them if you're using the same element. So that is kind of nice. But I don't see too many people prioritizing that, ever. They just grab their weapon with their +5 legendary element on it because that's what the mods are. They're just to bump your light level up that slight bit farther. And they go off and they kill stuff no matter what the shield type is. So it doesn't really matter. And then your power weapon, you have your fusion rifles, your shotguns, your sniper rifles, your rocket launchers, all in the same category. And of course your linear fusion rifles. So, and swords, yeah, I know. But it doesn't, how do I say this? A lot of the weapons just get put to the side because they're not as good in certain situations. So, for example, fusion rifles, they may see some play in the Crucible, but I don't see anybody using fusion rifles in PvE because it's so much easier and more damage dealing to carry a rocket launcher. I don't see anybody using linear fusion rifles anywhere because right now the amount of difficulty to use them just doesn't make up for the fact that they don't do a whole lot of damage comparatively. So that probably is something they're going to look at in the weapons tuning. And then doing this setup has a slight problem for me, and that's that it completely invalidates a lot of weapons and a lot of opportunities that Destiny 1 provided its weapon system. So, to start, weapons that are just invalid, so they got the Trespasser and Dreg's Promise, the Burst Fire energy sidearms, who cares? You got Last Hope and Last Dance. Burst Fire Energy Sidearm. So those are just completely invalid. Why would you waste your exotic slot? And then you have Icebreaker, for example. They can't give you a power weapon that regenerates ammo, just like they couldn't give you a heavy weapon in Destiny 1 that actually regenerated ammo. I mean, I know there was the Super Good Advice, but that didn't directly regenerate ammo from nothing. So stuff like Icebreaker, completely gone. What about the Queen's Choice weapon? The Queenbreaker's Bow and the other one, name I forgot. I never used the thing. Why would you use them? The Queenbreaker's Bow would essentially be a linear fusion rifle with less damage and a lot more ammo, which if they did that, that might be fun, but it would be more of a niche weapon than anything else. No Land Beyond, they can't give you a heavy primary weapon, so that's also out. Unless somehow they reworked it into some sort of scout, but I don't think that's going to happen. So a lot of potential exotics and a lot of potential creative ability is just gone. The excitement towards an elemental primary type weapon, scout rifle, auto rifle, hand cannon, gone. It's just not there, because you can get them literally from the very beginning of the game, as opposed to them being a raid reward. So, yeah, the weapon system kind of shoots itself in the foot here. Kind of intended? I'd say that with a question mark. I'm not sure that's really a pun. Whatever. I don't do that kind of joke. I don't try to anyway. So, it kind of, like I said, the weapon system kind of invalidates a lot of exotic. So then we're getting more into, like, base problems now, and that is, for essentially, the amount of gameplay. Now, if you want to know what I mean by the amount of gameplay, in Destiny 1, as soon as you played a story mission or a strike, you could go into that location's director and replay it whenever you want. The map was full of stuff for you to do. You could just jump into a story mission. Maybe you just wanted to watch the cutscene. Maybe you just liked that particular encounter with enemies. Maybe you wanted to test out a certain weapon in a certain way. You could just choose a mission and do it whenever you wanted. Any mission. Any strike. Destiny 2, you can't do that. So yeah, you can reload your adventures, little mini stories, but they don't really provide a lot for players. Even the first time you do them and they give you a reward, there's not a whole lot of reward really attached to them. So you're doing an extended patrol, essentially, as opposed to being able to go in and replay a strike or a story mission, because the way Destiny 2 works, you can only replay 3 story missions from Ikora once per week. 3 randomly selected, not of your choice, story missions that you can do once. Why? What if I want to play, the retaking the city? Maybe I want to do that, but that's not one of the options, so too bad, really. Maybe I want to redo, regrouping with Zavala and Titan. Too bad, it's not up there. So it kind of sucks. Or perhaps I want to go in and play a strike, and I don't want the inverted spire for the 19th time. Too bad. You have to go into a playlist and hope you get the strike you want. So yes, I like having the playlist to go into strikes, but I would like to have the option to just play any of them at any time. I know it's not really more gameplay. It's allowing you to play the gameplay that you want to play whenever you feel like it. So that's a little bit of a problem. So now that I've talked about the adventures, the meditations versus the story, and I've talked about rewards and armor and weapons and all of that, okay, I'm going to talk about the reward system. Okay, so I'm going to do the kind of easy stuff first, and that is the endgame rewards at the end of the Crucible. So in Destiny 2, it just kind of pops up in the side of the screen as the match ends, which is okay, you still get stuff. But in Destiny 1, when the scoreboard came up, it did that whole dramatic, and everybody could see what everybody got on the screen. I know it seems really dumb, but there is something incredibly satisfying about that. Minor nitpick. So then we're going to get into the cosmetics. You know where this is going. Okay, so in Destiny 1, if you wanted to unlock a certain ghost or sparrow, more often than not, you could actually go into a specific activity and get it. Now, I know they're starting to do that now in Destiny 2, and that's great, but there's no raid sparrows, there's no raid ships. Yes, there's finally a raid ghost, step in the right direction. But now you see somebody with a cool ship, and it's like, where'd you get that? Oh, you had access to a credit card and got lucky. As opposed to, where'd you get that? Oh, I did this really difficult quest, or I did this hidden thing, or I, grinded out this activity, and I got it. For example, raid sparrows, raid ships I already mentioned. And then we get into emblems. Okay, I don't know who in the Destiny 2 development team thinks we need more emblems. Oh my god. Thanks, great. We have a bunch, they don't do anything. And they're just everywhere. Okay? Now, I know you're adding in emblems that do something, and that's cool, but they still don't really feel like anything. For example, in Destiny 1, the emblems came from strikes, they came from raids, they came from doing specific activities in the various expansions. There's one that I like to run that I got for streaming for a large length of time. Yes, I streamed Destiny 1 when I got the chance. I streamed a lot during the Sparrow Racing League event. Can we get that back, please? On that note, can I get Sparrow Racing League back? I kind of miss it. Anyway, stuff really kind of more felt like it meant something. The world felt more built by players. Like, you could look at players and kind of know this is what they like. Now it's like you opened a loot box and got stuff. Which brings me to a little bit of a problem. If you play the story in Destiny 1, you get your sparrow, like, right away. If you play the story in Destiny 2, you don't get your sparrow until the very end of the game. Let that sink in. The very end of the game. And you get a choice of, like, 3. Cool. But that's it. How do you get other sparrows? Loot boxes. Yeah, I did a dramatic pause there. Loot boxes. How do you get other ships? Loot boxes. See where the problem is here? We have stuff that we used to be able to just purchase in-game in Destiny 1 for the easily acquirable Glimmer, or the Legendary marks, or Vanguard or Crucible marks as they were in the first game at the very beginning, that are trapped behind loot boxes. Now, I know you're changing that, and that's great. But having 80% of your different ships and sparrows and cool cosmetics put into loot boxes kind of takes away from their value, despite the fact that now you're actually paying money for them, because they don't feel rewarding. Like, I'm not going to sit here and spend $25 on loot boxes hoping I get the thing I want. Now, I know you can just get the loot boxes by playing and leveling up, and you've already gone through an XP scaling, throttling nonsense with that. But that's kind of what I want to mention. So, more of that in the base game, and I know you're going to do that in the future updates. Thank you for that. But I just wanted to talk about the state of the game as it is right now. So, I know this has been a bit of a longer video than I even expected, because I kind of end up going off on rambling rants. So, armor perks need to actually be useful and impactful, like the raid ones are now. Random weapon rolls is a little bit of a bigger problem than I think they're really willing to let on. I mean, mods 2.0 might fix this, but, it's kind of there. The weapon system kind of penalizes itself and devalues a lot of things. I know you probably won't be able to change that. I'm just saying, in the next game, maybe take that into consideration. Because, like I said, it invalidates a lot of would have been exciting loot. Strike and story replayability, that really couldn't be too hard, could it? I mean, when we go into patrols, just put the nodes back on the map so that we can play them whenever. I mean, I know the high-ranked ones from Ikora would be the ones you would play to get those particular tokens, but I want to play some of the other stuff, and I'm sure a lot of other people feel the same way. Bounties versus milestones, there's just something satisfying about handing in a bounty as opposed to just, there, milestone, you didn't even know you were doing it. Woo. And like I already mentioned, the reward system. So this has been a long, rambly rant. I'm probably going to cut it down from the initial recording time to try and get into the basics and remove some of the excessive ranting. But this has just been some of my thoughts on Destiny 2 as a player who has done a lot of talking with other people and playing of this game, and a lot of thinking about what I've actually been wanting to say here. So, these have been my thoughts and opinions. Anybody wants to comment, just throw it in a comment below. I would love to have discussions with people about potential fixes, which I will gladly do another video on once the discussions have been done. I'll probably talk more about the changes that Bungie is making in the future once we know more about them. But please, Bungie, this is my solemn request to you. You set up so much by the end of Destiny 1. You had so much potential going into Destiny 2. People see that potential. That is why they are disappointed. Because they know that this game can go so far. We just need to see it. Thank you for listening to my long and rambly rant. This has been Custom Challenge saying, challenge complete. Bye.